Before we dive in, let me know in the comments, what country are you watching from? I'd love to see where our viewers are tuning in from. And if you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Story 1. Let's begin with our first story, which will shake the way you think about security on cruise ships. This story follows a veteran security officer named James Mark, who came across something that maritime officials are still struggling to explain while working a trip from Miami to Nassau aboard the Royal Caribbean Independence. After 8 years in the field as a respected security guard, James faced an event that would end his career forever. The 34-year-old, who once served as a Navy petty officer, was well known in the American cruise industry for his careful, calm, and disciplined manner, which made him perfect for the stressful nightly shifts on Royal Caribbean's Independence. He knew every hallway, every emergency step, and every possible danger that could happen at sea. The ship, carrying over 3,200 passengers on its Miami to Nassau route, had become like a second home to him. But neither his 8 years of security experience nor his military background had prepared him for what he discovered late one October night. On October 15, 2019, calm waters and quiet decks made for the kind of night that seasoned crew members loved. The passengers were settled, the engines hummed, and the ship was smoothly heading toward the Bahamas. Around 2 a.m., James started his usual security patrol, something he had done thousands of times. He liked the late shift. It meant fewer drunk passengers to manage, quieter hallways, and the satisfaction of protecting sleeping families while they dreamed about their tropical vacation. His rounds included decks 6 through 10, starting with the starboard side and moving over to the port side, checking for anything unusual such as unlocked doors or noise. He carried his small flashlight, master key card, and security radio. Even though the hallways stayed dim at night to keep from waking passengers, Independence was equipped with advanced cameras and monitoring systems that James himself had helped install 2 years earlier during a major renovation. At exactly 2:47 a.m., while walking the deck 8 starboard hallway, he noticed something strange outside cabin 8, 247. The door was slightly open. Families with kids rarely left doors open in the middle of the night. Following his training, James quietly walked up and knocked lightly, saying in a professional but friendly tone, "Excuse me, this is ship security. Your door is open. I just want to make sure everything is okay in here." He waited 10 seconds, no response. He knocked again, louder this time. "Hello, ship security. Just checking for your safety. Please respond." Silence. Following security rules, James used his MasterCard to unlock the stateroom. As he slowly pushed the door open, a cold wave went through him. The cabin was empty, not just of people, completely empty. No luggage, no clothing in the closets, no toiletries in the bathroom. The beds looked perfectly made as though freshly prepared, yet his manifest listed the Morrison family as the cabin's occupants. Sarah and David, both 38, and their 2 kids, Emma 12 and Michael 9. They had checked in just 18 hours earlier in Miami. James quickly radioed the security control room. "This is Mark. Cabin 8247 is totally empty, but the manifest shows the Morrison family is assigned here." Lieutenant Rodriguez, his supervisor, answered within seconds. "That's not possible, Mark. The Morrisons checked in yesterday. They were seen at dinner last night at 11:43 p.m. Their key card registered entry into that cabin." James, now unsettled, searched every corner carefully. He stepped onto the balcony. Nothing. He crouched to look under beds, inside closets, and in the bathroom. No belongings, no trace of anyone ever being there. Not even fingerprints on the glass or hair in the drains. It looked like the cabin had never been occupied. The Morrison family had seemingly disappeared into thin air. James snapped photos with a security tablet and requested backup immediately. Within minutes, Lieutenant Rodriguez and Patricia Wells, the night manager, arrived. Both looked more and more disturbed as they inspected the room. Patricia pulled up the computer records on her tablet. "This makes no sense," she muttered. "Their account is still active. Look, room service at 10:30 p.m., the evening show, drinks at the pool bar. But wait, see this?" She showed the room service delivery log. The delivery was listed to cabin 8247, but under employee number 000000, an ID that didn't exist in their system. Rodriguez, now tense, made the call that changed everything. "We need to review security footage right away." The three of them hurried to the Deck 3 security office, where hundreds of cameras fed into a wall of monitors. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments, what country are you watching from? I'd love to see where our viewers are tuning in from. And if you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Story 1. Let's begin with our first story, which will shake the way you think about security on cruise ships. This story follows a veteran security officer named James Mark, who came across something that maritime officials are still struggling to explain while working a trip from Miami to Nassau aboard the Royal Caribbean Independence. After 8 years in the field as a respected security guard, James faced an event that would end his career forever. The 34-year-old, who once served as a Navy petty officer, was well known in the American cruise industry for his careful, calm, and disciplined manner, which made him perfect for the stressful nightly shifts on Royal Caribbean's Independence. He knew every hallway, every emergency step, and every possible danger that could happen at sea. The ship, carrying over 3,200 passengers on its Miami to Nassau route, had become like a second home to him. But neither his 8 years of security experience nor his military background had prepared him for what he discovered late one October night. On October 15, 2019, calm waters and quiet decks made for the kind of night that seasoned crew members loved. The passengers were settled, the engines hummed, and the ship was smoothly heading toward the Bahamas. Around 2 a.m., James started his usual security patrol, something he had done thousands of times. He liked the late shift. It meant fewer drunk passengers to manage, quieter hallways, and the satisfaction of protecting sleeping families while they dreamed about their tropical vacation. His rounds included decks 6 through 10, starting with the starboard side and moving over to the port side, checking for anything unusual such as unlocked doors or noise. He carried his small flashlight, master key card, and security radio. Even though the hallways stayed dim at night to keep from waking passengers, Independence was equipped with advanced cameras and monitoring systems that James himself had helped install 2 years earlier during a major renovation. At exactly 2:47 a.m., while walking the Deck 8 starboard hallway, he noticed something strange outside Cabin 8. 2:47. The door was slightly open. Families with kids rarely left doors open in the middle of the night. Following his training, James quietly walked up and knocked lightly, saying in a professional but friendly tone, "Excuse me, this is ship security. Your door is open. I just want to make sure everything is okay in here." He waited 10 seconds. No response. He knocked again, louder this time. "Hello, ship security. Just checking for your safety. Please respond." Silence. Following security rules, James used his MasterCard to unlock the stateroom. As he slowly pushed the door open, a cold wave went through him. The cabin was empty, not just of people, completely empty. No luggage, no clothing in the closets, no toiletries in the bathroom. The beds looked perfectly made, as though freshly prepared, Yet his manifest listed the Morrison family as the cabin's occupants. Sarah and David, both 38, and their two kids, Emma 12 and Michael 9. They had checked in just 18 hours earlier in Miami. James quickly radioed the security control room. "This is Mark. Cabin 8247 is totally empty, but the manifest shows the Morrison family is assigned here." Lieutenant Rodriguez, his supervisor, answered within seconds. "That's not possible, Mark. The Morrisons checked in yesterday. They were seen at dinner last night at 11:43 p.m. Their key card registered entry into that cabin." James, now unsettled, searched every corner carefully. He stepped onto the balcony. Nothing. He crouched to look under beds, inside closets, and in the bathroom. No belongings, no trace of anyone ever being there. Not even fingerprints on the glass or hair in the drains. It looked like the cabin had never been occupied. The Morrison family had seemingly disappeared into thin air. James snapped photos with a security tablet and requested backup immediately. Within minutes, Lieutenant Rodriguez and Patricia Wells, the night manager, arrived. Both looked more and more disturbed as they inspected the room. Patricia pulled up the computer records on her tablet. "This makes no sense," she muttered. "Their account is still active. Look, room service at 10:30 p.m., the evening show, drinks at the pool bar. But wait, see this?" She showed the room service delivery log. The delivery was listed to cabin 8247, but under employee number 000000, an ID that didn't exist in their system. Rodriguez, now tense, made the call that changed everything. "We need to review security footage right away." The three of them hurried to the Deck 3 security office, where hundreds of cameras fed into a wall of monitors. Yet their story lingers in the minds of investigators who quietly know the truth about what hides in the strange waters between Miami and Nassau, buried somewhere deep inside confidential maritime security files. Now let's move to the second tale. This story, too, will force you to rethink what you thought you knew, this time about the food you eat on cruise ships. In this account, we step into the heart of every vessel, the kitchen. An executive chef aboard the Norwegian Getaway would witness something so disturbing that it would end her career at sea forever. Isabella Santos had worked tirelessly for 6 years in the high-pressure kitchens of cruise ships before becoming head chef on the Getaway. On its 7-day Caribbean loop from Miami, she oversaw more than 15,000 meals a day for passengers and crew. At only 29, she was one of the youngest executive chefs in the American cruise industry. Her kitchen ran like a flawless operation, fast, sterile, efficient, almost like a military squad. She had never once failed a health inspection, earning a name as one of the strictest in food safety. The Norwegian Getaway was one of Norwegian Cruise Line's pride ships, carrying 4,000 passengers and 600 crew across the turquoise Caribbean. Her galley, located on Deck 2, was vast: 12 cooking stations, 4 giant refrigeration units, and storage that could feed a city. Every surface shone with stainless steel, every recipe was logged, every ingredient tracked from its delivery all the way to a plate. Isabella trusted her system completely. But on the morning of March 8, 2021, something would happen that no training, no routine could prepare her for. She arrived for her daily checks at 4:30 a.m., 2 hours before breakfast service. The night shift had already prepped basics for the morning buffet. In just a few hours, thousands of hungry guests would stream into the Windjammer Cafe for fruit, eggs, pastries, and bacon. Isabella followed her ritual carefully. She checked temperatures in refrigerators, inspected prep counters, reviewed the logs filled out overnight by Carlos Martinez, her night shift lead. Everything appeared perfect, nothing out of order, nothing to worry about. As her team filed in around 5:15 a.m., the familiar rhythm of the kitchen came alive. Miguel Rodriguez manned the egg station. Elena Vasquez began arranging trays of fruit. Antonio Silva fired up the ovens for bacon and pastries. The galley hummed with focus. Every chef in sync, every step polished from endless repetition. At 6:45 a.m., Isabella peeked through the galley windows and watched with pride as families filled their plates with steaming food, fresh fruit, and warm bread. She always loved this moment, watching guests enjoy safe, delicious meals she had guarded with care. Everything was flawless until 8:23 a.m., when the first call came through that would change her life. Chef Santos, this is Patricia Williams from Medical. We have a passenger with severe food illness. She's asking specifically about your breakfast service. Isabella froze. Every cruise chef's nightmare was food poisoning, but she was sure of her procedures. Still, her chest tightened as she replayed every step of the morning in her head. Then another call. 3 more passengers, same symptoms: nausea, dizziness, vomiting. By 9:30 a.m., the number had grown to 12. By 10:15 a.m., it was more than 50. Dr. Williams said the symptoms were unlike anything she had ever seen in 15 years at sea. Isabella instantly shut down breakfast service. All food samples, eggs, bacon, fruit, pastries, even the boiling water, were sent for testing in the ship's lab. She scoured the surveillance footage, desperate for a clue. The results came back at 2 p.m., and they made no sense. Nothing. No bacteria, no viruses, no toxins. Every food item was safe. The water was clean. The temperatures were perfect. Yet over 200 passengers were sick, violently sick, with no medical explanation. Dr. Williams shook her head in disbelief. I've tested everything twice, Isabella. Your food is clean, but your guests are ill. These symptoms don't exist in any medical book. Some of them talk about underwater dreams. Some are hallucinating and speaking in languages they never learned. That night, Isabella sat in the surveillance room, eyes glued to the tapes. 8 high-definition cameras recorded every inch of her galley. She had reviewed these feeds countless times before. This time she searched for anything out of place, and then she saw them. The footage showed people moving through her kitchen at 3:47 a.m., 43 minutes before she arrived. They were not her crew. She knew her staff, and these faces were not in any roster. Their skin looked scarred or burned, their faces obscured. Yet they wore kitchen uniforms and moved with strange precision, like dancers rehearsing a routine. They touched surfaces, handled utensils, worked with food, but the tools in their hands did not appear on camera. They prepared something invisible, substances the recording system could not detect. They stayed for exactly 17 minutes. At 4:04 a.m., they vanished. Isabella had arrived only 26 minutes later. The timestamp was clear, yet the security log showed no unauthorized entry. She called the ship's security chief, Lieutenant Commander Jackson. He watched the footage with a pale face. This can't be real, Chef. These hallways are covered. No one entered your galley last night except your crew. I have the proof. He pulled up hallway feeds. Every entrance and exit was recorded. The cameras showed only her approved staff entering during the night. Yet the kitchen footage clearly showed others inside, tampering with the food that had poisoned hundreds. The investigation was swift, and for Isabella, devastating. Captain Eric Johansson contacted the Coast Guard and Norwegian Cruise Line headquarters. By that evening, investigators arrived by helicopter, including experts from maritime security and the CDC. Though Isabella was never allowed to see their IDs. She was questioned for hours, grilled about her clearance, her protocols, her state of mind. The investigators confiscated all the surveillance footage, closed the galley for 3 days, and said they would conduct special testing. In the meantime, Isabella was reassigned to the crew dining hall, her career already hanging by a thread. On the fourth day, Isabella was called to a private meeting with Captain Johansson, the lead investigator, and the lawyer for Norwegian Cruise Lines. The meeting was brief but devastating. Chef Santos, the investigator began, our findings show a violation of food safety during the March 8th breakfast service. As the executive chef, you are responsible, even though we cannot determine the exact cause of contamination, Isabella protested, showing them her temperature records, her strict procedures, and her spotless safety history. But the investigator's next words froze her. The footage you claim shows unauthorized individuals in your kitchen has been reviewed. Our analysis proves the data is corrupted, so it cannot be accepted as evidence. What you saw has been marked as a digital glitch. The following morning, Isabella was handed a settlement offer. It included a generous severance, glowing references for future jobs, and a strict non-disclosure agreement. The terms were clear. She could never speak of the March 8th incident, not to food safety authorities, not to the media, not to anyone in the maritime industry. In return, Norwegian Cruise Line promised not to fight any unemployment claims and would cover 6 months of her salary. Reluctantly, Isabella signed, but her career was shattered. She could no longer work in professional kitchens without jumping at every sound or second-guessing every decision. At night, she woke gasping for air, haunted by the same underwater visions and strange hallucinations that passengers had reported. After 6 months of rejection in the job market, Isabella returned to her hometown of San Antonio, Texas, and opened a small cafe. Yet even there, her paranoia followed. She set up 4 surveillance cameras inside the kitchen and checked the footage every morning before opening, always half expecting to see those same strange figures again. She never stopped obsessing over cruise ship food safety. Late at night, she pored over news reports, noticing a disturbing pattern. Unexplained outbreaks of food poisoning across different cruise lines, often ending with head chefs abruptly resigning under secrecy agreements. Some even had surveillance tapes mysteriously marked as corrupted. Meanwhile, the Norwegian getaway carried on as though nothing had happened. Its galley had been remodeled with new equipment and extra cameras, and a fresh executive chef ran the operations. Guests still enjoyed their breakfast buffets at the Windjammer Cafe, completely unaware that the very kitchen they trusted was once the stage for an incident officials quietly wrote off as a simple technical malfunction. But for Isabella, time stopped at 3:47 a.m., the exact moment on the footage when her life was torn apart. She had never returned to a cruise ship since, and yet some nights alone in her cafe, she still rewinds the CCTV footage, staring at the screen just to make sure she isn't working with unseen company. Let's move on to the third story now, one that will truly send shivers down your spine. Story 3 takes us deep inside the Carnival Vista's engine room, where the chief engineer had an encounter that defies every law of mechanics and reason. For James Mallister, after 15 years in the heart of ship engine rooms, this night would end his career forever. At only 42 years old, he was the man responsible for the vast diesel engines, power generators, and intricate systems that drove one of Carnival Cruise Line's largest ships, the Carnival Vista. With over 4,000 passengers and 1,400 crew on board, every life depended on the humming rhythm of James's engine room. He was not just any engineer. He was the third in his family to take on this profession, following both his father and grandfather into the maritime trade. Educated at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, he built a reputation as the one engineer who could fix anything. Colleagues trusted him. Carnival trusted him. To them, James was the man who could keep the Vista running no matter what. The Carnival Vista itself was a floating marvel. Launched in 2016, it was packed with cutting-edge propulsion systems and advanced electronic monitoring equipment designed to catch problems before they became disasters. Its massive Wärtsilä diesel engines, buried deep below sea level on Deck 1, produced an astonishing 62,000 horsepower, pushing the 133,500-ton vessel smoothly across the Mediterranean. Down in the engine spaces, areas passengers would never see, James knew every gauge, pipe, and control by heart. But on September 14th, 2020, during a routine voyage from Barcelona to Naples, James would learn that not all problems could be solved with engineering know-how. It was 11:30 p.m., and James was completing his final inspection before the night shift took over. The ship was steady, the waters calm, and every system looked perfect. Engine temperatures were ideal, fuel levels normal, power steady. Walking through the sprawling engine spaces, James moved past the massive diesel engines, through the generator sections, and finally into the auxiliary machinery room. That was when something unusual caught his attention. The seawater intake pump on the port side should have been in standby mode, but it was running. Following the standard checklist he had done thousands of times, James bent down to check the pump's control panel. That was when a chilling creak echoed through the room. He looked up just in time to see heavy piping above him break free from its brackets. Before he could react, it crashed down. James leapt aside, but the pipes caught his leg, slamming him against the machinery. The pain was instant and unbearable. His leg felt shattered. Worse, he realized the area wouldn't be checked for another 45 minutes. He was trapped, alone, and his radio signal was blocked by the heavy pipes. All he could hear was static and broken fragments of voices from other parts of the ship. He was pinned with no way out. Then came the moment that would haunt James for the rest of his life. Through the dim emergency lights, he saw someone standing in the machinery room near the water treatment unit. Relief washed over him. "Thank God," James gasped. "I'm stuck under here. Get help." But the man didn't answer. Instead, he drifted forward in a strange, unnatural way, as though his feet barely touched the floor. As he drew closer, James recognized him and froze. It was Thomas Bradley, the former chief engineer of the Vista, James's own predecessor. But Thomas had died in this very engine room 3 years earlier. James had attended his funeral, spoken at his memorial, even packed away his belongings. Yet here he was, standing just as he had looked in life, dressed in carnival overalls. Shaking, James whispered, "Thomas." His mind raced. Was this shock? Was he hallucinating? But when Bradley spoke, the voice was real, metallic, like echoing inside a steel drum. "James, you'll be here for a while. Your leg is broken in 3 places. You'll go into shock in 20 minutes, but don't worry, I'll stay with you." The words struck James harder than the pain. This was no dream. For hours, as James drifted in and out of consciousness, Bradley sat calmly nearby, talking as if nothing was strange. He spoke about the engine room, about systems James had upgraded, even complimented him. "You've done well," he said, "better than I ever did. But you're pushing yourself too hard. 15-hour days, no breaks, taking on work your junior engineers should handle. You're burning out, James, just like me." Bradley spoke of modifications and updates to the Vista systems, things that had happened after his death. Knowledge he should never have. James listened in horror and awe, trapped under the steel. At exactly 3:15 a.m., as Bradley had predicted, Roberto Silva from the night shift entered for his rounds. He found James pinned beneath the pipes, and the rescue began. Cutting torches were needed to free him, and doctors rushed in to stabilize him before he could be moved. But Bradley was gone. When Roberto asked who James had been talking to, James couldn't answer. Yet the rescue crew admitted they had heard voices coming from the room before they arrived. James was airlifted to Palma de Mallorca, where surgeons spent 8 hours repairing his shattered leg. Investigators from Carnival, marine safety authorities, and insurance agents all questioned him about the accident. They concluded that metal fatigue in the pipe brackets had caused the collapse, a failure that should have been caught in routine checks. But James carried a deeper truth, one he never confessed to the investigators, for he knew what he saw, and he knew who had kept him company in those long hours beneath the steel. James had checked those pipe brackets dozens of times during his years of maintaining the Vista's systems. In fact, only 6 hours before the failure, they had looked perfectly fine. Metal fatigue like that should have taken months or even years to appear, not just a few hours. That impossible fact made James even more certain that Thomas Bradley's presence had been real and not some pain-induced vision. Bradley had mentioned crew members who hadn't even joined the Vista until after his death, spoke in detail about recent system upgrades, and even predicted the exact time James would be found. None of that could have been imagined. After 6 weeks of recovery, Carnival asked James to return to the Vista for what they called a fitness for duty evaluation. But the moment he stepped back inside, he only lasted 4 hours before demanding to leave. Each time he walked into the auxiliary machinery room, he felt Bradley's presence hovering nearby. Soon, other strange incidents spread through the engine spaces, gauges showing impossible readings, tools shifting on their own, and phantom footsteps in supposedly empty compartments. It wasn't long before James signed Carnival's strict non-disclosure agreement. In exchange, he accepted a large payout and early retirement. The official accident report claimed the failure was due to poor inspection and recommended tighter safety measures. There was no mention of what James had witnessed, no word of Thomas Bradley. Today, in his hometown of Mobile, Alabama, James works quietly as a consultant engineer for a small company that builds systems for fishing vessels. He has refused every high-paying cruise ship job offered to him. The nightmares alone are enough to keep him away. Dreams of being trapped beneath the pipe, with Bradley always seated close by, watching him with sharp, knowing eyes. The Carnival Vista has since continued sailing the Mediterranean under the care of a new chief engineer. Its auxiliary machinery room fully refurbished with stronger brackets, better safety systems, and upgraded communication. Still, some crew members whisper about the uneasy feeling of being watched when they're alone down there. A few have even requested transfers to other ships, though they rarely explain why. Back on land, James hasn't let go. He still pours through maritime accident records, looking for connections, searching for patterns. He has found troubling similarities. Engineers mysteriously leaving the industry after signing NDAs, accidents written off as equipment failures, and stories of skilled men trapped in bizarre, unexplainable situations. Sometimes in the dead of night, his phone rings. There's no voice on the other end, only the sound of engines humming, the deep thrum of a ship out at sea. He always hangs up quickly, but he knows exactly what it means. Thomas Bradley hasn't left. He's still out there, watching over the engine rooms where men continue to face dangers they cannot explain. Let's move on to the fourth story. This one will shake your trust in the very idea of medicine at sea. Our setting shifts to the medical center of the celebrity eclipse, where healing took a terrifying turn. Here, a ship's doctor witnessed patients suffering from conditions no textbook could explain. For Dr. Lisa, who had already spent 7 years practicing medicine at sea, This would be the case that tested everything she thought she knew. The Eclipse was on a 14-day voyage through northern Europe, leaving from Southampton and gliding toward the Norwegian fjords. On board were over 2,800 passengers and 1,200 crew, all under the care of Dr. Lisa, one of Celebrity Cruise's most respected physicians. Just 31 years old, she had already built a reputation as a calm, brilliant medical officer. Before joining the cruise industry, she had trained at Johns Hopkins University and completed her residency in emergency medicine. She loved the unique challenge of treating people far from land, where she and her team had to handle everything, from heart attacks and strokes to broken bones and seasickness, without the luxury of a nearby hospital. Her facility was one of the finest at sea: a dozen patient beds, a full pharmacy, diagnostic machines like X-rays and ultrasounds, even a small surgical suite. The Eclipse itself was one of Celebrity's Solstice-class ships, known for its beauty and elegance as it carried guests into some of the most remote and breathtaking parts of the world. The medical center sat quietly on Deck 1, far enough away from the noise of the ship to provide peace for the sick and injured. But on June 22, 2019, as the Eclipse crossed the cold, dark waters of the North Sea toward Bergen, Norway, Dr. Lisa would face a situation unlike any she had ever seen. It began at exactly 3:33 a.m. A sharp call jolted her awake. It was Patricia Morrison, the night shift nurse, and her voice was trembling. "Dr. Lisa, you need to come right now," Patricia said breathlessly. "I've never seen symptoms like this before. You need to see her yourself after 3 years of working with Patricia, doctor." Lisa had never heard her colleague sound so shaken. She quickly dressed and rushed to the medical center, expecting to find the usual: perhaps a heart attack, stroke, or another serious but treatable illness. Instead, she walked in to see Sandra, a 58-year-old retired school teacher from Manchester, sitting upright on the exam table speaking fluent Norwegian. That in itself might not have been alarming, except for one detail. Sandra only spoke English. Her passport and medical intake confirmed she had never even been to Norway. "I'm Dr. Lisa, Sandra. Can you tell me how you're feeling?" she asked gently. Sandra turned her glassy eyes toward her, then replied in rapid Norwegian. Dr. Lisa didn't understand it fully, but the rhythm and tone were unmistakable. Patricia pulled her aside, whispering in panic, "Doctor, she's been speaking like this for 20 minutes. She first came in with nausea and dizziness, talking clear English. But then, out of nowhere, she switched to Norwegian and hasn't spoken English since. And it's not random. She's giving detailed descriptions of Bergen's harbor, dock numbers, shipping schedules, things she couldn't possibly know." Dr. Lisa immediately began examining Sandra. Her brain function seemed fine, pupils responsive, vital signs steady. Her heart rate was normal, reflexes sharp, blood pressure only a little elevated. Physically, nothing was wrong. Yet she continued her strange speech, describing Bergen in uncanny detail. Then at 3:47 a.m., just 14 minutes after Sandra's arrival, another patient was rushed in. Michelle, a 34-year-old accountant from Dallas, was trembling and nauseous. But the most bizarre symptom was the same. She too had begun speaking a foreign tongue. Michelle was fluently describing the undersea terrain of the North Sea in Danish, despite having never studied the language. By 4:15 a.m., the infirmary was full. 6 patients, none of them connected, all different ages and nationalities, all speaking languages they had never learned. Worse, their stories overlapped. They spoke with frightening detail about shipwrecks, sunken vessels, drowned crews, some from centuries past. Anthony, a 45-year-old construction worker from Boston, was the most disturbing of all. A Norwegian-speaking crew member later identified his speech as an archaic dialect, no longer spoken for over 2 centuries. Anthony was recalling, with precise accuracy, the sinking of World War II cargo ships, complete with coordinates, crew rosters, and cargo details he could never have known. Dr. Lisa ran every test she could. Blood work, normal. Brain scans, perfectly clear. Neurological checks, nothing abnormal. No signs of seizure, stroke, or psychosis. On paper, every single patient was healthy, yet the impossible symptoms grew worse. The patients began to describe sensations of drowning, visions of being surrounded by wreckage, and encounters with long-dead sailors. Even more chilling, they moved as one. At random moments, all 6 would turn their heads in the same direction, as if listening to voices no one else could hear. They described the same underwater landscapes, as if seeing them together. It was then Dr. Lisa made the hardest choice of her career. At 5:30 a.m., she called Captain Robert Morrison and demanded emergency helicopter evacuation. "Captain, 6 passengers are suffering from conditions I can't explain or treat. They need advanced neurological and psychiatric care immediately." Within minutes, the captain himself arrived. What he saw left him visibly shaken. 6 patients sat in perfect sync, heads tilted at the same angle, muttering in dead languages. As he entered, they all turned to him at once, and though speaking in their separate tongues, clearly delivered the same chilling phrase: "Welcome aboard, Captain. We've been waiting for you in the deep." The captain wasted no time ordering the ship toward the nearest port with airlift capability. Dawn was the earliest possible evacuation, but it was still 3 hours away. In that time, things grew stranger. The patients began sketching identical maps of the seafloor, pinpointing wrecks with alarming accuracy. They recounted the final hours of ships long forgotten, citing details only preserved in obscure maritime archives. Most unsettling of all, they seemed connected, finishing each other's sentences, sharing thoughts despite speaking different languages. Dr. Lisa had never seen anything like it. When the helicopter finally arrived, the medical team on board sedated all 6 patients without explanation. Dr. Lisa was ordered to hand over their files and told nothing further. Later, she learned that the specialists included neurologists and psychiatrists whose identities she was not allowed to confirm. She was warned the matter was now classified. The investigation that followed was swift. Cruise medical directors, maritime safety officials, and what she was told were global health experts interrogated her relentlessly about her mental state, her diagnostic process, her interpretation of symptoms. By the 3rd day, the official conclusion was announced: acute stress-induced psychosis with xenoglossia-like features. According to them, the patient's sudden fluency was not real knowledge, but confabulation, a trick of the mind under collective stress. Dr. Lisa fought back, presenting her meticulous notes, the patient's synchronized movements, the historically accurate accounts. But the lead investigator dismissed her firmly. "Our data suggests you misinterpreted coincidental vocalizations under pressure. Contamination bias." Doctor, with that, her career at sea was over. In return for silence, Celebrity Cruises offered her a generous settlement, relocation to a shore clinic, and lifetime benefits, so long as she never spoke of June 22nd again. Against her better instincts, she signed. Now back in Seattle, she continues to research cases of xenoglossia, maritime psychology, and mysterious group disorders. She's found troubling parallels: cruise passengers suddenly speaking new languages, groups experiencing shared visions, episodes dismissed as mass hysteria. The Celebrity Eclipse still sails through Northern Europe, its medical center now reinforced with stronger psychiatric protocols and updated communication tools. A new doctor has taken Lisa's place, but whispers remain. Crew members quietly report passengers slipping into languages they've never learned. Norwegian translators on board have even been secretly trained to recognize old nautical dialects. Meanwhile, Lisa works in a small urgent care clinic, but late at night she still searches medical journals and archives, hoping to find another doctor who's witnessed what she has. She often revisits marine disaster records, especially those of the North Sea, wondering if Sandra, Michelle, and Anthony survived. Their voices haunt her, their vivid descriptions of underwater realms medicine cannot reach. Now let's go on to our fifth narrative, which will make you want to stay in your cabin forever. We reached the MSC side on our fifth level when a full deck of passengers went missing for exactly 4 hours. No one could explain how it happened, nor could anyone explain what the cruise director discovered during those lost hours. After 20 years of experience as a cruise director, Captain Robert Anderson finally came across something that made him question reality itself. At 48 years old, Robert was one of the most seasoned cruise entertainment leaders in the industry. On the MSC Seaside during its 7-day Eastern Caribbean voyage out of Miami, he oversaw thousands of guests and more than 400 crew members. His job was to make sure every traveler experienced the perfect holiday they had paid for. He had started his career as a junior coordinator on small ships, worked his way up through the ranks, and carried a degree in hotel management from Florida International University. Certified in crowd control and passenger safety, he had always been known as the man who could handle anything: sick guests, last-minute schedule changes, or even large-scale emergencies. The Seaside itself was a marvel of modern design, famous for its outdoor promenade circling Deck 8 with oceanfront dining and views that thrilled passengers. From the main theater on Deck 6 to the sports deck on Deck 16, Robert's office sat perfectly on Deck 5, placing him at the heart of guest activities. The ship's flow was built for easy movement and organized events. But on one ordinary night in August of 2021, Robert was faced with something that no training could have prepared him for. It began at 9:47 p.m. on August 3rd, when Robert's assistant, Maria Santos, radioed in with confusion in her voice. "I'm getting strange reports from Deck 7, she said. "The sports bar, casino, and karaoke lounge are all empty, completely empty. But the passenger tracking system says over 200 people are supposed to be there right now." Robert pulled out his tablet at once. It displayed the evening's events and real-time attendance data. 247 people were listed across different Deck 7 venues. The casino was hosting its poker tournament, McBride's Bar was running trivia night, and the Star Lounge had karaoke underway. Everything on the system showed business as usual. Yet Maria insisted the rooms were deserted. Robert told her to check them again while he hurried to Deck 7 himself, unsettled by a situation he had never encountered in 2 decades of service. When he arrived, he saw it was exactly as she described. The Star Lounge, with seating for 80, was empty even though microphones and songbooks were laid out, waiting for singers. The casino poker tables were perfectly arranged with chips and cards mid-game, but not a single player remained. Trivia night at McBride's had pencils, score sheets, and drinks, but only staff stood there confused. Robert turned to Jennifer Walsh, the karaoke lounge manager, and asked, "Where did everyone go?" "Your tablet says 78 signed up tonight." Jennifer shook her head in disbelief. "That's just it." At 9:30, the lounge was packed. People were laughing, singing, drinking. I went to the back for request forms at exactly 9:47. When I came back, less than half a minute later, every person was gone. Drinks still warm, coats and handbags left behind, phones on tables. They all vanished at once. Robert examined the lounge himself. It was a bizarre scene. Half-finished cocktails still cold, hot food untouched, personal belongings scattered across chairs, and the smell of smoke lingering in the air. It looked as though time had stopped mid-celebration. The same eerie signs appeared throughout Deck 7. In the casino, ashtrays held half-burned cigarettes, cards lay face up in the middle of play, and chips were stacked as if waiting for players to return. David Kim, the casino supervisor, showed Robert the table records. Look here. Play continues normally until 9:47 p.m. Then instantly every station records player absent, but the cash, drinks, and personal items, they're still here. Robert's unease grew as he studied the Seaside's passenger tracking system. Using keycard technology, the ship could monitor when passengers enter cabins, restaurants, or entertainment venues. Records confirmed that all 247 missing guests had checked into Deck's 7 locations between 8:30 and 9:30, yet not one record showed them leaving. Robert muttered aloud, "That's impossible. They're clearly not here, but the system insists they are." He ordered a full manifest check, guest services contacted, and every missing passenger's keycard pinged. 15 minutes later, the results made even less sense. According to the system, every one of the 247 passengers was inside their own cabin at the same exact time. That was technically impossible, and yet the data confirmed it. Stranger still, some of the very same passengers were also showing up in other parts of the ship, like the spa, dining rooms, pool deck, and shops, as if they were in multiple places at once. Then came the call from Lisa Thompson at guest services, and her voice carried the same disbelief. "Mr. Anderson, I started calling the cabins directly. Every one of the missing guests is answering. They all sound completely normal, and each of them insists they never left their cabins tonight. However, their key cards still showed clear entry into Deck 7's venues. Even their dining records proved they had eaten out just 2 hours earlier." To make sense of this impossible situation, Robert decided to check on the missing guests himself. He chose to begin with the Mitchell family, David, Sarah, and their 2 teenage kids, who were all registered for karaoke and were staying in cabin 8247. When Robert knocked, David Mitchell opened the door with a friendly smile. "Good evening, Mr. Anderson. Is everything all right?" he asked casually. David explained that he and his family had spent the whole night in their cabin watching movies. Robert stepped inside and found Sarah and the 2 kids sitting on the couch. They were dressed exactly as they had been at dinner just a couple of hours before. Everything about their appearance seemed ordinary, but their eyes had a strange, distant haze. "Our records show your family checked into the Star Lounge for karaoke at 9:15 p.m., Robert said, holding out his tablet with the electronic logs. David stared blankly at the TV. "That's strange, Mr. Anderson. We've been here the whole evening. We haven't been anywhere near Deck 7. Yet as David spoke, Robert noticed his voice didn't sound quite right. It carried a hollow, almost artificial echo, like it was coming from far away or through a filter. Robert went on to visit 6 more cabins of passengers who were listed as missing. Each case was the same: families and individuals who insisted they had stayed in their rooms, but who had actually been seen at Deck 7 events earlier. Their eyes shared the same unfocused, glassy look, and their voices carried that eerie, hollow tone. Just after 1:30 a.m., 4 hours after the initial disappearance, Robert's radio came alive with a call that froze him. "This is security, Mr. Anderson," Lieutenant Rodriguez said urgently. "We have a situation on Deck 7. You need to come here immediately. When Robert arrived, his heart sank. All 247 missing passengers had returned, back in their seats at karaoke, poker, and trivia, as if nothing had ever happened. They were in the exact same spots, wearing the same outfits, and continuing the same activities they'd been doing at 9:47 p.m. But here was the strangest part. Their drinks were freshly poured, their food steaming hot, and none of them showed any sign that hours had passed. Robert found the Mitchells in the karaoke lounge. "David, didn't I just see you in your cabin an hour ago?" he asked. This time David's eyes were sharp, focused, alive. "No, Mr. Anderson, we've been here at karaoke all evening. We haven't spoken to you at all tonight. The kids are about to sing, and Sarah just finished her favorite song. We've been in this lounge since 9:15. When investigators arrived, Robert was kept away from the credentials of the marine safety experts, security teams, and MSC executives who took over. Security footage was later reviewed. The recordings clearly showed the passengers on deck 7 right up until 9:47 p.m. And then suddenly the venues went empty in an instant. Just as suddenly at 1:33 a.m., the footage showed them all reappearing exactly as they had been, back in their seats, drinks in hand, mid-conversation, mid-song. The strangest detail of all came from the clocks. Every clock on deck 7 had stopped at 9:47 p.m. during the 4 lost hours, while clocks on every other deck ticked normally. Then at the moment the passengers returned, the clocks on deck 7 started again at 9:47, erasing those missing hours. Technical experts later said it was impossible for the ship's chronometers to have behaved that way. Robert was forced into early retirement, signed to a strict non-disclosure agreement with full benefits, forbidden to discuss what had happened with anyone, crew, passengers, or press. The official report called it nothing more than technical glitches with passenger tracking and timekeeping systems. Robert never returned to cruise work. Today he manages events at a luxury resort in Key Largo, Florida. Yet even now he checks his watch obsessively at exactly 9:47 each night, often waking up at that precise time if he falls asleep early. Over time, he has uncovered other disturbing stories in the cruise industry. Similar disappearances, similar reappearances, all with no memory of the missing hours. The MSC Seaside continues to sail with a new cruise director. Deck 7's venues run as usual, but crew whisper that the clocks there constantly fall out of sync with the ship's main chronometer. Karaoke, casino nights, and trivia go on as if nothing happened, even in a place where time itself once stood still for 4 impossible hours. Meanwhile, Robert Anderson refuses to schedule anything beyond 9:47 p.m., living in quiet fear of that cursed time. He sometimes calls guest services in the middle of the night just to make sure no one has vanished. On board the ship where he lost 4 hours of his life, an incident that officials insist never took place, time continues its usual course. Let's go on to the 6th tale, Narrative 6. This will also cause you to doubt the safety protocols you entrust with your life. Our 6th narrative leads us to the lifeboat exercise, which ought to be the safest aspect of any cruise. This incident occurred on board the Allure of the Seas, where a standard safety drill turned into a nightmare that the passengers were still unwilling to talk about. At the age of 26, Elena Pro, who had been a safety officer for 4 years, came upon something that would need her to change jobs entirely. Elena was in charge of leading required lifeboat drills and making sure that all 400 guests could be properly evacuated in the event of an emergency as a qualified maritime safety specialist on Royal Caribbean's Allure of the Seas. Her extensive training at the International Maritime Organization and years of hands-on experience overseeing crowd control during emergency procedures on some of the biggest cruise ships in the world had equipped her with a thorough understanding of maritime safety procedures. Being able to communicate safety protocols to the broad international passenger base that boarded Royal Caribbean's flagship ships was made possible by Elena's fluency in English, Spanish, and Russian. She had over 200 lifeboat drills under her belt with no safety incidents and advanced certifications in evacuation techniques, crowd psychology, and marine emergency response. Her coworkers appreciated her painstaking attention to detail and her capacity to maintain passengers' composure and concentration throughout what many found to be the most dull aspect of their cruise holiday. One of the biggest passenger ships ever constructed was the Allure of the Seas. The ship's bridge immediately responded in a horrifying manner. Elena's radio was filled with the hardly contained terror of Captain James Sullivan. "What's your status, Elena? Although our systems reflect that no lifeboats have been launched, we are displaying 4 lifeboats in the water with people on board. The readings on our instruments are impossible." Elena verified Captain Sullivan's worst suspicions by peering over the rail. In the Caribbean waters below were 4 lifeboats, each with about 125 passengers from its muster station. The ship's monitoring systems, however, indicate that every lifeboat is still firmly secured in its divot. As Elena stared at the proof of a huge safety failure, the electronic safety systems displayed normal conditions. "Captain, I can see that there are 4 lifeboats in the water with about 500 people on board. It looks like the boats are slipping away from the ship. We require search and rescue efforts immediately." As Elena worked with other crew members to try to rescue passengers who, based on the ship's systems, were still safely on board, her training came into play. However, Elena's perception of physical reality was called into question by what she saw over the course of the following 3 hours. The lifeboats that were still attached to the ship looked just like the ones that were floating in the ocean below. Using binoculars to look at the boats in the water, Elena saw what looked to be the same passengers who were also visible on deck going about their regular cruise business to look at the lifeboats in the water. The ship's helicopter was sent out. However, the pilot reported seeing nothing but empty ocean when it arrived at the coordinates where Elena could clearly see the boats. The pilot's confused voice came over the radio. "Bridge, this is the rescue helicopter. I'm at the exact coordinates, but there's nothing here. No wreckage, no lifeboats, no people." The water below was calm and clear, yet from the ship's deck, Elena could clearly see lifeboats drifting far out, filled with people waving and shouting for help. Some crew members saw them too when she pointed, but others insisted the sea was completely empty. The ship's radar picked up nothing unusual on the water. Still, Elena's sight did not waver. She knew what she saw. Later, during the investigation, she was never given access to the records from the Marine Safety Specialists, the U.S. Coast Guard, or Royal Caribbean's Corporate Safety Division. Once the ship diverted to Cozumel, Mexico, every passenger was evacuated while technical experts inspected the lifeboats. No damage, no signs of misuse, nothing out of the ordinary was ever found. Elena was questioned intensely about her training, her mental health, and exactly what she believed she saw that night. Investigators focused on the strange conflict between her eyewitness account and the ship's flawless electronic monitoring systems, which showed no errors, no malfunctions, and no breaches of safety rules. By the 4th day of questioning, she was told her story didn't match the data. The lead investigator said she must have suffered stress-related hallucinations during the drill. He explained the lifeboats she swore were real were just tricks of light, optical illusions caused by reflections of the sun and sea. Soon after, Royal Caribbean offered her a settlement. If she signed a strict non-disclosure agreement, She would receive full benefits, a generous severance, and a new shore-based role in safety consulting. She was forbidden from speaking to media, cruise staff, or marine safety groups about the November 12th incident. Reluctantly, Elena agreed, but she never returned to shipboard safety. She lost her trust in drills, safety systems, and even her own eyes. Today, she works in Miami as a corporate safety trainer at a manufacturing firm. She avoids boats of every kind, haunted by her fear of the sea. The allure of the seas where the incident began now uses extra backup controls for lifeboats and improved electronic surveillance during drills. Yet reports from crew still describe glitches, lifeboats powering on without reason, drills showing odd passenger behavior, systems triggering warnings without cause. Staff are now quietly trained on how to respond to what management calls unusual drill anomalies. Elena herself still follows maritime safety news late into the night. She notices patterns, officers resigning after strange lifeboat failures, unexplained evacuations, crews unable to explain passenger behavior during emergencies. Some nights she pulls up weather maps of the Caribbean, staring at the very waters where she once saw 500 people adrift in lifeboats the authorities claim never existed. Now let's go on to the seventh story. Additionally, this one will cause you to doubt reality itself. The seventh narrative brings us to the Royal Princess's Communications Center, where an officer begins receiving messages from the future, warnings of disasters that haven't yet happened. After 12 years as a communications officer, David Kim encountered an experience that forced him into early retirement at only 35. David handled every line of contact on board: radio signals, satellite feeds, and emergency communications. During Princess Cruises' Royal Princess 7-day Alaska Inside Passage voyage from Seattle, his extensive training with the Federal Communications Commission, along with certifications in satellite systems and emergency broadcasting, made him one of the most trusted specialists at sea. Fluent in English, Korean, and Japanese, he often worked as a bridge between international ships and the Coast Guard when sailing in Alaskan waters. Colleagues admired his calm under pressure, especially when storms cut off ships from the outside world. The Royal Princess, a grand vessel with 1,200 crew and more than 3,600 passengers, was sailing its scenic route through Ketchikan, Skagway, and Juneau. On Deck 9, David's communications hub held state-of-the-art equipment and layered backup systems meant to guarantee the ship was never truly cut off. But on September 18, 2021, during a storm that slammed the narrow fjords with 45-knot winds and 15-foot seas, David experienced something that defied all logic. At 11:55 p.m., he lost every satellite connection at once. His primary system crashed, the emergency network failed, and the backups displayed error codes he had never seen before. The ship was isolated. He alerted Captain Lisa Morrison. "We've lost all external communications. Every channel is down." The captain didn't believe it was possible. "We have backups, David. Keep working." Yet as he scrambled to restore signals, stranger things began. At 12:17 a.m., the radio crackled with a message. "This is Coast Guard Station Juneau, Royal Princess. We have received your distress call regarding an engine room fire happening in 47 minutes. Rescue teams are en route." David froze. No fire, no signal had been sent. Yet the Coast Guard spoke as if disaster was already underway. He called the bridge. "Captain, we're fully operational, but I just received a message about a fire that hasn't even happened." Minutes later came another transmission. "This is Coast Guard Helicopter 6512, Royal Princess. We confirm passengers in the water." Rescue of 43 casualties from a lifeboat accident is underway. David checked the passenger logs. Every guest was safe in their cabins. No lifeboats were missing. Still, the transmissions continued, each one describing events as if they had already occurred. System failures, evacuations, lifeboat disasters, rescues. Then came the most chilling signal of all at 1:03 a.m. His own voice on the radio. David Kim, Communications Officer, Royal Princess. We've struck an iceberg. The ship sank at 12:47 a.m. Survivors requesting immediate rescue. He listened to himself speaking from a future that hadn't happened, begging for help. He summoned the captain, who listened in stunned silence as the messages replayed. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Those are Coast Guard voices, I know." And that last voice, "David, that was you. How could you be sending distress calls when you're standing here?" When she contacted the real Coast Guard, they insisted no such signals existed. Yet for the next 6 hours, David kept receiving them, each more detailed, each predicting catastrophes that never occurred. The voice on the radio even revealed technical details he had never studied, describing failures in systems he'd never been trained on. Finally, at 6:23 a.m., the voice returned once more. "David, this is you. In 7 minutes, you will collapse from the stress of these transmissions. You will never serve on a ship again. Goodbye." And at 6:30 a.m., Captain Morrison found David unconscious at his station. Doctors later diagnosed him with severe psychological exhaustion. He never returned to the sea. Investigators from the FCC and Princess Cruises dismissed the reports as hallucinations caused by stress, fatigue, and the storm. The equipment tested perfectly afterward. No transmissions were ever found in the logs. With a confidential settlement, David accepted early retirement and disability benefits, forbidden from speaking of that night. Today, he works as a technical writer in Portland, Oregon, but he lives in fear of radios, plagued by phantom voices and sleepless nights. Crew aboard the Royal Princess say the communications center was upgraded with new systems and backup tools. Yet during storms, officers sometimes still report strange, untraceable signals, messages that don't exist, log entries that can't be explained. David himself continues to monitor frequencies from home. He searches for others like him, communication officers who've heard impossible warnings from futures that never happen. Some nights he even hears his own voice calling out again, begging for rescue from disasters that may exist only in the strange space between radio waves, the present, and what's still to come. As we proceed to the ninth story, you will never want to see another cruise ship performance after this one. Our eighth story takes us to the entertainment deck where the show turns into an absolute nightmare. This one took place in the Carnival Horizon's main theater, where actors presented scenes they had never practiced. Rebecca had been an entertainment director for 6 years when at the age of 28, she came across something that would permanently push her out of the cruise business. During the Carnival Cruise Line's Carnival Horizon 7-day Southern Caribbean cruise from Miami, Rebecca served as the senior entertainment coordinator, overseeing and producing all live entertainment, variety shows, and theatrical productions. Rebecca had a theater arts degree from New York University and years of experience running big productions on some of the toughest schedules in the industry. This gave her a deep knowledge of cruise ship entertainment. Across the Carnival fleet, she was known for her creativity, strong organization, and her ability to manage the diverse cast of singers, dancers, and performers who made up modern cruise entertainment teams. She spoke French, Spanish, and English, which helped her work smoothly with artists and technical staff from around the globe. Even with seasickness, equipment limits, In the constant change of performers that cruise ships faced, her colleagues admired how she kept everything running like a Broadway-level show in a theater much smaller than those on land. Among Carnival's Vista-class ships, the Carnival Horizon carried 1,400 crew and 3,900 passengers across the sparkling Southern Caribbean. The ship visited ports like Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, Barbados, Aruba, St. Kitts and Nevis, Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and St. Kitts and Nevis. The main theater, spread across decks 3 and 4, was a stylish space with 1,200 seats, excellent lighting, and sound systems equal to land-based venues. It had dressing rooms, backstage areas, and technical setups built for complex musicals and variety acts. But on December 5, 2019, during what should have been a normal showing of Caribbean Dreams, the ship's signature production, Rebecca faced something that broke every rule she thought she knew about theater. At 8 p.m., she took her seat in the lighting booth to run the show for nearly 200 guests. She had produced the same show dozens of times before, a 90-minute performance filled with Caribbean music, singing, and dancing. The cast of 8 international performers had been working together for 6 months and knew every step, every note, every line. The show opened as usual with Island Paradise, a bright mix of calypso and reggae with colorful costumes and lively energy. Everything matched Rebecca's detailed schedule, and the audience was enjoying it. Then at 8:23 p.m., as the cast transitioned between the third and fourth songs, something strange happened. Instead of beginning Tropical Sunrise as planned, the performers suddenly launched into a dramatic scene Rebecca had never seen before. Maria Rodriguez, the Spanish lead vocalist, spoke in flawless English with an accent Rebecca had never heard her use. "Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we will show you something extraordinary. Something that happened in this theater 3 years ago." Rebecca froze. The other cast members fell into place as if following new direction. She tried to contact them through their headsets, but none responded. They moved with perfect precision, performing what looked like a serious dramatization of a ship disaster. The dialogue, movements, and intensity were far beyond anything in her shows. Maria announced that on December 5, 2016, an evacuation failure in this same theater had caused the deaths of 347 passengers. Rebecca panicked. She flipped through her notes. The Carnival Horizon was launched in 2018. It didn't even exist in 2016. The story was impossible, yet the actors pressed on with uncanny skill, demonstrating evacuation breakdowns, safety system failures, and structural collapse. The performance was so realistic it terrified the crowd, who stayed glued to their seats. At 8:47 p.m., they even acted out the deaths of passengers trapped inside the theater during the staged disaster. They knew the exact layout of exits and safety systems, knowledge no actor should have had. Rebecca tried to shut the show down by killing the sound and lights, but nothing stopped them. The actors seemed lit and amplified by some invisible source. He searches for others like him, communication officers who've heard impossible warnings from futures that never happen. Some nights he even hears his own voice calling out again, begging for rescue from disasters that may exist only in the strange space between radio waves, the present, and what's still to come. As we proceed to the 9th story, you will never want to see another cruise ship performance after this one. Our 8th story takes us to the entertainment deck where the show turns into an absolute nightmare. This one took place in the Carnival Horizon's main theater, where actors presented scenes they had never practiced. Rebecca had been an entertainment director for 6 years when at the age of 28, she came across something that would permanently push her out of the cruise business. During the Carnival Cruise Line's Carnival Horizon 7-day Southern Caribbean cruise from Miami, Rebecca served as the senior entertainment coordinator, overseeing and producing all live entertainment, variety shows, and theatrical productions. Rebecca had a theater arts degree from New York University and years of experience running big productions on some of the toughest schedules in the industry. This gave her a deep knowledge of cruise ship entertainment. Across the Carnival fleet, she was known for her creativity, strong organization, and her ability to manage the diverse cast of singers, dancers, and performers who made up modern cruise entertainment teams. She spoke French, Spanish, and English, which helped her work smoothly with artists and technical staff from around the globe. Even with seasickness, equipment limits, and the constant change of performers that cruise ships faced, her colleagues admired how she kept everything running like a Broadway-level show in a theater much smaller than those on land. Among Carnival's Vista-class ships, the Carnival Horizon carried 1,400 crew and 3,900 passengers across the sparkling Southern Caribbean. The ship visited ports like Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, Barbados, Aruba, St. Kitts and Nevis, Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and St. Kitts and Nevis. The main theater, spread across decks 3 and 4, was a stylish space with 1,200 seats, excellent lighting, and sound systems equal to land-based venues. It had dressing rooms, backstage areas, and technical setups built for complex musicals and variety acts. But on December 5, 2019, during what should have been a normal showing of Caribbean Dreams, the ship's signature production, Rebecca faced something that broke every rule she thought she knew about theater. At 8 p.m., she took her seat in the lighting booth to run the show for nearly 200 guests. She had produced the same show dozens of times before, a 90-minute performance filled with Caribbean music, singing, and dancing. The cast of 8 international performers had been working together for 6 months and knew every step, every note, every line. The show opened as usual with Island Paradise, a bright mix of calypso and reggae with colorful costumes and lively energy. Everything matched Rebecca's detailed schedule, and the audience was enjoying it. Then at 8:23 p.m., as the cast transitioned between the third and fourth songs, something strange happened. Instead of beginning Tropical Sunrise as planned, the performers suddenly launched into a dramatic scene Rebecca had never seen before. Maria Rodriguez, the Spanish lead vocalist, spoke in flawless English with an accent Rebecca had never heard her use. "Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we will show you something extraordinary. Something that happened in this theater 3 years ago." Rebecca froze. The other cast members fell into place as if following new direction. She tried to contact them through their headsets, but none responded. They moved with perfect precision, performing what looked like a serious dramatization of a ship disaster. The dialogue, movements, and intensity were far beyond anything in her shows. Maria announced that on December 5, 2016, an evacuation failure in this same theater had caused the deaths of 347 passengers. Rebecca panicked. She flipped through her notes. The Carnival Horizon was launched in 2018. It didn't even exist in 2016. The story was impossible, yet the actors pressed on with uncanny skill, demonstrating evacuation breakdowns, safety system failures, and structural collapse. The performance was so realistic it terrified the crowd, who stayed glued to their seats. At 8:47 p.m., they even acted out the deaths of passengers trapped inside the theater during the staged disaster. They knew the exact layout of exits and safety systems, knowledge no actor should have had. Rebecca tried to shut the show down by killing the sound and lights, but nothing stopped them. The actors seemed lit and amplified by some invisible source.